The church bells tolled like a death knell, each chime a hammer against Jamie Carter's heart. He stood alone at the edge of the packed pews, his husband's coffin draped in white roses just feet away, while whispers slithered through the crowd like venom. "Gold digger," they hissed, their eyes slicing through him as if he were a thief who'd stolen a life instead of a man who'd loved one. Jamie's hands trembled as he clutched the funeral program, the paper crumpling under his grip. His husband, Ethan Marshall, was gone, taken by a sudden heart attack at 42, leaving Jamie, barely 30, to face a world that had never accepted their love. The small town of Willow Creek, nestled in the rolling hills of upstate New York, had always watched them with suspicion, their marriage a scandal to the old money families who ruled the community. Ethan, heir to the Marshall estate, had been their golden son, until he chose Jamie, a waiter with nothing but a kind heart and a stubborn dream of a better life. The funeral was a battlefield. Ethan's mother, Eleanor, sat in the front row, her face a mask of grief and contempt. She hadn't spoken to Jamie since the day Ethan proposed, when she'd called him a nobody who trapped her son. Now, her icy stare pinned him to the back of the church, where he stood like an outsider at his own husband's farewell. The will reading was scheduled for tomorrow, but the rumors were already spreading. Ethan's family had ensured Jamie would inherit nothing. "He doesn't deserve a cent," a cousin muttered, loud enough for Jamie to hear. "He's just a leech who got lucky." Jamie's chest tightened, but he refused to break. He'd promised Ethan he'd be strong, even when the world tried to tear him down. Their love had been a rebellion, a quiet defiance against a town that saw Jamie as less than human for daring to love a man like Ethan. They'd build a life together, 5 years of stolen mornings, late-night laughter, and whispered dreams in their cozy lakeside cabin. Ethan had taught Jamie to believe in himself, to see beyond the labels the world slapped on him. Now, with Ethan gone, Jamie felt those dreams slipping through his fingers like sand. As the service ended, the crowd filed out, their condolences bypassing Jamie entirely. He lingered by the coffin, his fingers brushing the polished wood. "I'll make you proud," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I won't let them win." But the weight of their judgment pressed down on him, and for the first time, he wondered if he could keep that promise. The next morning, the Marshall estate loomed like a fortress, its ivy-covered walls a testament to wealth and power. Jamie arrived at the lawyer's office, a small room tucked inside the mansion, where Ethan's family waited like vultures. Eleanor sat at the head of the table, flanked by Ethan's sister, Claire, and his uncle, Richard, whose sneer could curdle milk. The lawyer, Mr. Hargrove, adjusted his glasses and began reading the will, his voice steady but strained. "To my mother, Eleanor Marshall, I leave the family estate and its holdings," he began. Eleanor's lips curved into a satisfied smile. "To my sister, Claire, I leave the Manhattan apartment and a trust fund." Claire nodded, her eyes flicking to Jamie with disdain. The list went on, parceling out Ethan's fortune to relatives who'd barely visited him in his final years. Jamie's name wasn't mentioned once. "And to James Carter," Mr. Hargrove said at last, pausing as every head turned to Jamie. "I leave my personal journals to be delivered to him privately." A murmur rippled through the room. "Journals?" "That was it," Claire snorted, and Richard muttered something about charity cases. Jamie's face burned, but he kept his chin high, refusing to let them see his pain. As the family dispersed, Mr. Hargrove handed Jamie a leather-bound box containing Ethan's journals. He was very specific about this. The lawyer said softly, his eyes kind but guarded. "Read them carefully." Jamie nodded, clutching the box like a lifeline. He left the estate with nothing but those journals and the weight of a town scorn, their whispers trailing him like shadows. Gold digger. Fraud. Nothing. Back at the cabin, Jamie sat on the worn couch where he and Ethan used to curl up together, watching the lake shimmer under the moonlight. The journals lay unopened in his lap, their weight heavier than the box itself. He was terrified to read them, afraid of what they might reveal, or what they might not. Had Ethan doubted him too? Had their love been a lie to everyone, even to the man he'd given his heart to? He opened the first journal, its pages filled with Ethan's elegant handwriting. The entries began years before they'd met, chronicling Ethan's life as the reluctant heir to a family that valued wealth over love. Jamie's name appeared a few pages in, written with a tenderness that made his throat ache. Met a waiter today. Jamie, he smiled, and it was like the sun broke through the clouds. As Jamie read on, the journals revealed a side of Ethan he'd never fully known, a man wrestling with his family's expectations, his own fears, and the courage it took to love Jamie openly. "They'll never understand us," Ethan had written, "but I'd rather lose everything than lose him." Tears blurred Jamie's vision. This was their story, raw and unfiltered, a testament to a love that had defied the world. But the final entry, written just days before Ethan's death, stopped Jamie cold. "If they try to break him, the truth will be my last gift to him." What truth? Jamie's heart raced as he turned the page, but it was blank. The answer, it seemed, was hidden somewhere else. Jamie barely slept that night. The journal spread across the coffee table like a map to a treasure he couldn't yet find. The words, "the truth will be my last gift," echoed in his mind, a riddle that kept him pacing the cabin's creaky floors. Outside, the lake reflected a restless sky, its ripples mirroring the storm brewing in Jamie's heart. By morning, he was determined to uncover Ethan's secret. The journals hinted at something bigger, something Ethan had hidden, perhaps to protect him. Jamie started with the cabin, their sanctuary, searching every corner for a clue. He rifled through drawers, checked under floorboards, and even climbed into the attic, where dust motes danced in slants of sunlight. Nothing, just old photos, love letters, and memories that cut deeper than any knife. Desperate, Jamie drove to the local library, a quaint brick building where Ethan had spent hours researching his family's history. The librarian, Mrs. Ellis, had always been kind to them, one of the few in Willow Creek who hadn't judged their love. "Looking for something specific, Jamie?" she asked, her eyes soft with sympathy. "I don't know," he admitted, clutching the journals. "Ethan left me these, and I think he hid something in them. Something important." Mrs. Ellis nodded, her gaze lingering on the leather-bound books. "Ethan was always digging into the past," she said. "Try the archives. He spent a lot of time there." The library's archives were a maze of dusty files and faded ledgers, a record of Willow Creek's history and the Marshall family's dominance. Jamie pored over documents, his fingers smudged with ink, searching for anything that might connect to Ethan's cryptic words. Hours passed, and frustration gnawed at him until he found a folder labeled Marshall Trust, 1985. Inside was a legal document, yellowed with age, detailing a trust fund Ethan's grandfather had set up, one that wasn't mentioned in the will. The trust was worth millions, set to mature when Ethan turned 42, the age he'd been when he died. But the document had a condition. The funds could only be claimed by Ethan or his legal spouse. Jamie's breath caught. He was Ethan's husband, legally married under New York law. Why hadn't the family mentioned this? Why had Mr. Hargrove skipped it in the will reading? Suspicion coiled in Jamie's gut. He photocopied the document and drove to Mr. Hargrove's office, the journals and the trust papers tucked under his arm. The lawyer looked surprised to see him, his face paling as Jamie laid the document on his desk. "Why wasn't this in the will?" Jamie demanded, his voice shaking with anger and hope. "This trust, it says Ethan's spouse inherits if he doesn't claim it." "That's me," Mr. Hargrove sighed, rubbing his temples. "It's complicated, Jamie. The family, they contested the trust's validity. They claim your marriage wasn't legitimate in their eyes." Jamie's fists clenched. "Not legitimate? We were married for 5 years. Ethan loved me. You know that." "I do," Mr. Hargrove said quietly. "But Eleanor has powerful lawyers. They're saying Ethan was coerced, that you manipulated him. They're pushing to have the trust revert to the family." Jamie felt the room spin. "Coerced?" The accusation was a knife to his heart, twisting the love he and Ethan had shared into something ugly and false. He left the office in a daze, the photocopied trust burning a hole in his pocket. The town square was bustling with autumn festival preparations, but Jamie felt like a ghost, unseen and unwanted. He stopped by the park where he and Ethan had shared their first kiss, the memory so vivid it hurt. Ethan had pulled him close under an oak tree, whispering, "You're my home, Jamie, no matter what they say." Now, that home was under siege, and Jamie had to fight to protect it. He returned to the cabin and opened the journals again, searching for any clue about the trust. One entry caught his eye, dated a year before Ethan's death, found Grandpa's trust papers. "Mom will lose her mind if she knows. I need to keep this safe for Jamie." Ethan had known about the trust, and he'd known his family would try to take it away. But how could Jamie prove it? The family's influence ran deep, their wealth a shield against any challenge. That night, Jamie's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Meet me at the old mill tomorrow." I know the truth about Ethan's trust. His pulse raced. The old mill was a crumbling relic on the edge of town, a place no one visited anymore. Was this a trap or the key to Ethan's final gift? Jamie didn't know, but he couldn't ignore it. He replied, "Who is this?" No response came. The next day, Jamie drove to the mill, his heart pounding. The air was thick with the scent of damp wood and rotting leaves. He stepped inside, the floorboards creaking under his boots, and saw a figure in the shadows, a woman, her face half hidden by a scarf. "Jamie," she said, her voice low, "I work for Ethan's family. I know what they did." "Who are you?" Jamie asked, his voice steady despite his fear. "Someone who's tired of their lies," she said, stepping into the light. Her name was Lila, a former assistant to Eleanor who'd been fired after questioning the family's finances. "Ethan found out they were hiding the trust from you," she said. He was going to confront them, but then her voice faltered. "He died." Jamie's knees buckled. "You're saying they knew?" "They let him die knowing he'd fight for me." Lila's eyes were haunted. "I don't know if they let him die, but they're burying the truth, Jamie. And they'll bury you too if you don't fight back." Lila's words hung in the air like smoke, curling around Jamie's thoughts as he drove back to the cabin. The idea that Ethan's family might have known about his heart condition and done nothing felt like a betrayal too monstrous to comprehend. Yet the pieces were falling into place. The hidden trust, the rushed reading, the way Eleanor's eyes had gleamed with triumph when Jamie was left with nothing but journals. He needed proof. Lila had given him a starting point, a name, Dr. Harold Vance, the family's private physician who'd treated Ethan in his final months. If anyone knew about Ethan's health, it was him. But getting to Vance wouldn't be easy. He was loyal to the Marshalls, bound by their money and their secrets. Jamie's only leverage was the journals and the trust document, fragile threads in a web of lies. The next morning, Jamie tracked down Dr. Vance's office in Albany, a sleek building that screamed wealth. He didn't have an appointment, but he didn't care. He marched past the receptionist, ignoring her protests, and found Vance in his office, reviewing charts. The doctor, a wiry man with graying hair, looked up, startled. "Mr. Carter," he said, his tone clipped. "This is highly irregular." "I need to know about Ethan," Jamie said, slamming the trust document on the desk. "Did you know about his heart condition? Did you tell his family?" Vance's face tightened, but he didn't answer. "Ethan left me this," Jamie pressed, holding up a journal. "He wrote about you, about how you warned him to slow down, but he didn't listen. Why didn't you do more?" Vance's eyes flickered with something, guilt, maybe, or fear. "I did my job," he said. Ethan was stubborn. He refused treatment, said he didn't want to live like an invalid. Jamie's heart sank. Ethan had always been fiercely independent, but to hide something so serious? Did Eleanor know? Jamie asked, his voice barely a whisper. Vance hesitated, then nodded. She was informed, but Ethan swore her to secrecy. He didn't want you worrying. Jamie's vision blurred with tears. Ethan had protected him, even at the cost of his own life. But the family silence felt like a choice, a way to erase Jamie from their legacy. Armed with Vance's admission, Jamie knew he had to confront Eleanor. He drove to the Marshall estate, his resolve hardening with every mile. The mansion's gates loomed like a challenge, but Jamie didn't falter. He rang the bell, and a butler ushered him into the grand foyer, where Eleanor waited, her posture rigid as stone. "What do you want, James?" she asked, her voice dripping with disdain. "The truth," Jamie said, holding up the trust document. "You knew about Ethan's heart condition. You knew about the trust, and you let him die, thinking you'd take everything from me." Eleanor's face didn't change, but her hands twitched, betraying her. "You have no proof," she said coldly, "and no place here." "I have Ethan's journals," Jamie shot back, "and I have Lila. She's ready to testify about your family schemes." It was a bluff. Lila hadn't promised to testify, but it hit its mark. Eleanor's eyes widened, just for a moment, before she regained her composure. "You're out of your depth," she said. "Leave, or I'll have you removed." But Jamie saw the crack in her armor, the fear that he was getting too close. He left the estate, his mind racing. He needed more than Lila's word in a single document. He needed undeniable evidence. Back at the cabin, Jamie dove back into the journals, reading late into the night. One entry, buried in the middle of a volume, caught his eye. Found the safe in Dad's old study. Combination is our anniversary, June 12th. If anything happens to me, Jamie needs to know. Jamie's heart stopped. Their anniversary. Ethan had left him a key, hidden in plain sight. The safe was in the Marshall estate, in a study Ethan's father had used before his death. Getting in would be nearly impossible, but Jamie had no choice. He called Lila, who agreed to help, though her voice trembled with fear. "They'll ruin me," she said, "but I owe Ethan this." Together, they devised a plan to sneak into the estate during the annual Willow Creek Gala, when a mansion would be packed with guests and security would be stretched thin. The night of the gala, Jamie dressed in a borrowed suit, his nerves frayed but his purpose clear. Lila met him at the edge of the property, slipping him a staff badge she'd swiped from her old job. "Be quick," she whispered. "The study's on the second floor, East Wing." Jamie nodded, slipping through the crowd of glittering guests, their laughter a stark contrast to the weight in his chest. He found the study, its heavy oak door unlocked in the chaos of the gala. The safe was hidden behind a portrait of Ethan's father, just as the journal described. Jamie's hand shook as he entered the combination. June 12th, 15. The safe clicked open, revealing a single envelope marked for Jamie. Inside was a letter from Ethan, written in his careful hand. "My love," it began, "if you're reading this, I'm gone, and my family has tried to take everything from you. The trust is yours, legally, undeniably. I've recorded proof of their interference. It's with someone I trust. Find her." Below was a name, Sarah Bennett, Ethan's childhood friend, now a lawyer in Boston. Jamie's heart soared, then sank. Sarah, the one person Ethan's family couldn't control. But finding her would mean leaving Willow Creek, risking everything to chase a truth that might destroy him. Jamie clutched the envelope as he slipped out of the estate, the gala's music fading behind him. The night air was crisp, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and the weight of Ethan's final words. Sarah Bennett was his last hope, a beacon in the storm that threatened to drown him. He drove straight to the cabin, packed a small bag, and booked the first bus to Boston, his mind racing with possibilities. What proof had Ethan left? And why had he trusted Sarah to hold it? The bus ride was a blur of sleepless hours, the journals and envelope tucked safely in his backpack. Boston's skyline rose like a promise as dawn broke, and Jamie felt a flicker of hope for the first time since Ethan's death. He found Sarah's law office in a sleek downtown building, her name etched on a brass plaque. When he walked in, Sarah was waiting, a tall woman with sharp eyes and a warm smile that reminded him of Ethan. "You must be Jamie," she said, ushering him into her office. "Ethan told me you'd come." Her words hit like a punch. Ethan had planned for this, had known his family would try to erase Jamie's place in his life. Sarah pulled a USB drive from her desk, her expression grave. "This is what he left for you," she said. "But you need to be ready for what's on it." Jamie's hands trembled as he took the drive. "What is it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "A recording," Sarah said. "Ethan made it a month before he died. It's him talking about the trust, his family's threats, and his health." She paused, her eyes softening. "He knew he was running out of time, Jamie. He wanted to protect you." Back at a cheap motel, Jamie plugged the USB into his laptop, his heart pounding. Ethan's voice filled the room, steady but strained, as if every word cost him. "If you're hearing this, Jamie, it's because I'm gone and my family's trying to bury you. The trust is yours. Grandpa's will is ironclad. But Mom and Claire, they've been working with the bank to hide it. They threatened to cut me off if I didn't divorce you." Ethan's laugh was bitter. "As if I'd ever leave you. I've been sick, Jamie. My heart is failing. I didn't tell you because I couldn't bear to see you hurt. But you need to fight for what's yours. Sarah has the legal documents. Don't let them win." Tears streamed down Jamie's face as the recording ended. Ethan had known he was dying, had known his family would try to destroy Jamie's future. The pain of that secret was a fresh wound, but it fueled Jamie's resolve. He wasn't just fighting for money. He was fighting for Ethan's legacy, for their love, for the truth. Sarah helped Jamie build a case, combining the recording, the trust document, and Ethan's journals into a legal challenge against the Marshall family. She warned him it wouldn't be easy. "Eleanor's got influence," she said, "but this evidence is strong. We can win." Jamie nodded, his fear giving way to determination. He'd spent too long letting Willow Creek define him. Now, he'd define himself. The lawsuit was filed in Albany, and the news spread like wildfire through Willow Creek. The townsfolk whispered, some with pity, others with scorn, but Jamie didn't care. He was done hiding. The courtroom became his battleground, where Sarah presented Ethan's recording to a stunned judge. Eleanor's lawyers scrambled, claiming the recording was fabricated, but the trust document and Ethan's journals corroborated every word. During a break, Eleanor cornered Jamie in the courthouse hallway, her eyes blazing. "You'll ruin our family's name," she hissed. "Is that what Ethan would have wanted?" Jamie met her gaze, unflinching. "Ethan wanted me to be free," he said. "You took him from me. I won't let you take this too." The trial stretched on for weeks, each day a test of Jamie's strength. The Marshalls painted him as a schemer, a nobody who'd seduced their son for profit. But Sarah was relentless, her cross-examinations exposing the family's greed and prejudice. Lila testified, her voice shaking as she recounted years of financial manipulations she'd witnessed. Dr. Vance, under oath, admitted Eleanor had known about Ethan's condition and done nothing to help. The courtroom was packed on the final day, the air thick with tension. Jamie sat alone, his hands clasped, as the judge delivered the verdict. "The court finds the Marshall Trust valid and enforceable," she said. "James Carter, as Ethan Marshall's legal spouse, is entitled to the full amount." A gasp rippled through the room. Eleanor's face crumpled, and Claire stormed out, but Jamie felt only relief, a weight lifting from his shoulders. The trust was his, millions that Ethan had fought to secure for him. But it wasn't about the money. It was about Ethan's love, his belief in Jamie, his refusal to let his family's hatred win. Jamie left the courtroom, the journals tucked under his arm, and stepped into the crisp Albany air. For the first time in months, he felt like he could breathe. The victory in court didn't erase the pain, but gave Jamie a foundation to rebuild. He returned to Willow Creek one last time, not as the outcast they'd branded him, but as a man who'd fought for his truth. The cabin by the lake felt different now, less like a sanctuary, more like a memory. He walked to the park where he and Ethan had shared their first kiss, the oak tree still standing, its branches heavy with autumn leaves. He pressed his hand to the trunk, whispering, "We did it, Ethan. We won." The trust money was more than Jamie could have imagined, but he didn't want a mansion or a life of luxury. Ethan had taught him that wealth wasn't measured in dollars, but in love, in purpose, in standing tall against a world that tried to break you. Jamie used part of the money to start a foundation in Ethan's name, funding scholarships for LGBTQ youth in small towns like Willow Creek, where acceptance was still a battle. He wanted Ethan's legacy to be one of hope, not division. The townsfolk's whispers faded over time. Some apologized, their faces flushed with shame, while others avoided Jamie's gaze. Mrs. Ellis, the librarian, became a friend, inviting him to speak at the library about Ethan's life and their love. Lila moved to Boston, free from the Marshall shadow, and sent Jamie postcards filled with gratitude. Sarah remained a steadfast ally, helping him navigate the legal aftermath and ensuring the foundation's mission thrived. Eleanor and Claire retreated from public life, their influence diminished by the scandal. The Marshall estate, once a symbol of untouchable power, was sold to pay legal fees, its grandeur reduced to a footnote in Willow Creek's history. Jamie didn't gloat. He didn't need to. Their downfall was their own doing, a consequence of greed and prejudice. A year after the trial, Jamie stood by the lake, the journals in his hands. He'd read them countless times, each word a piece of Ethan he could still hold. The final entry, with its promise of truth, had been his guide through the darkness. Now, he felt ready to let go, not of Ethan, but of the pain that had tethered him to this town. He scattered the ashes of the journals into the water, watching the pages dissolve like memories released into the wind. "I love you," he whispered, knowing Ethan was with him, not in the ashes but in his heart. Jamie left Willow Creek the next day, moving to a small coastal town in Maine, where the ocean stretched wide and the air felt clean. He bought a modest house with a view of the waves, a place where he could heal and dream again. The foundation grew, its impact reaching kids who'd once felt as lost as Jamie had. He volunteered at a local community center, mentoring young people who reminded him of himself, scared but fierce, with hearts too big for the world to contain. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jamie sat on his porch, a cup of coffee warming his hands. He thought of Ethan, of their stolen mornings and quiet nights, of the love that had carried him through the worst days of his life. The world had called him a gold digger, had tried to strip him of everything, but they couldn't take what mattered most, the truth of who he was and the love he'd shared with Ethan. He smiled, the ache in his chest softer now, replaced by a quiet strength. Ethan's final gift hadn't been the money. It had been the courage to fight, to stand, to live unapologetically. And Jamie would, for the rest of his days, in a world that was slowly learning to love as fiercely as they had.